are gone.
What's with the shoes?
Detailed,
Yeah,
weird,
that's weird.
The film begins with a woman named Lennon driving at night through a national park forest. She is casually biting her finger while driving, but decides to stop after accidentally making it bleed. And then, there was a deer that suddenly stood in front of his car. Lennon didn't know if the deer was just passing by or had some other intention, but the moment he looked away, the deer suddenly disappeared. Upon arriving at the destination, the national park headquarters, it was finally revealed that Lennon was a rookie aspiring to become a forest ranger. Chief Jong, the leader, was giving instructions about their duties, which would require them to work alone for 90 days, approximately 3 months, without any partners or companions. This was related to several cases of missing hikers over the past few years. By deploying rangers at various points, it was hoped that these disappearances could be minimized. Before leaving, Lennon accidentally ran into a married couple, an uncle and an aunt who already knew him. They happened to be planning a camping trip in this forest, just the two of them, to reminisce about their youth.
Oh, your family must be so proud of you.
Yep.
Using a helicopter, Lennon was dropped at a predetermined location. He immediately walked toward the post or cabin that had been prepared. There he transformed the cabin walls into an investigation board, filled with photos of a little girl named Jenny Lennon, his own sister who had been reported missing in this forest. This suggests that Lennon was not merely working as a forest ranger. He had a secret mission of his own, to uncover the truth behind his sister's disappearance.
Good morning, Rangers, and welcome to the first backcountry roundup of this.
The next morning, Lennon was seen preparing for his patrol as part of his duty as a forest ranger. He began walking through the national park forest, which spans approximately 73 hectares.
And suddenly, there it is.
Exactly.
The rangers know. They have to know.
Night fell, and he set up a small tent, eating and sleeping alone with only a dim light. It truly takes a brave person to do this kind of job, something I would definitely be too scared to do. Who knows what could be out there, wild animals or even ghosts. On the second day, Lennon continued his patrol with his only means of communication, a handy talkie that he could use to contact the center or the nearest forest ranger. However, his handy talkie suddenly experienced interference due to its low battery, and he had forgotten to bring a spare. To conserve power, he decided to remove all the batteries. Long story short, night fell. In the pitch-black darkness, the only source of light was a flashlight. Suddenly, Lennon felt excited when the walkie-talkie made a sound despite having no batteries at all. Just as his shock hadn't yet subsided, Lennon was startled again by the appearance of someone Jackson, a fellow forest ranger. Jackson was a senior ranger whom Lennon had met before at the headquarters. The two of them eventually settled in their respective tents for the night and began chatting with each other. Whether it was a chance encounter or something else, Jackson suddenly started talking about the case of several missing forest rangers. Lennon, who had his own agenda, didn't pay much attention but still respected the conversation. The next morning, Lennon said goodbye to Jackson and continued his patrol. After several hours of circling the area, he returned to his starting point, the poster cabin, to clean himself up after nearly 2 days without a bath. Day after day passed as he patrolled and recorded the locations he had visited, haunted by the shadow of his missing younger sibling. The thought consumed his mind, making it impossible for Lennon to sleep soundly.
We need help! No, hurry!
Then there was a hiker who claimed to be lost and in need of help. However, strangely enough, the hiker suddenly ran into the bushes, forcing Lennon to chase after him.
114, this is...
The next morning, the hiker was immediately evacuated by helicopter. Meanwhile, his girlfriend Sarah was still lost in the forest. As a result, Jackson and several rangers were assigned to search for her, while Lennon was ordered to stay at the cabin in case Sarah found her way there. He'd help him recognize her. He was given Sarah's driver's license. After Lennon returned to the cottage, he felt restless and wanted to join the search like the others. So he boldly disobeyed Mother Jang's orders and secretly went on patrol.
Sarah! Sarah! Sarah!
Until nighttime, Lennon still hadn't found anything until he encountered the black deer again. It's the same one that had appeared in the opening scene. But when Lennon looked away for just a moment, the deer had suddenly vanished. Who knows what it meant? Before long, Lennon found a woman wearing a shirt but no pants, and when he looked closer, it turned out that
Are you real?
yes, it was Sarah. She was immediately evacuated. While Lennon was still puzzled by her behavior, which was just like the previous hikers, he had no idea what had happened to the two of them. Meanwhile, Mrs. Zhang looked very disappointed with Lennon's violation. Instead of staying in the cabin, he wandered around, which ultimately led her to make a tough decision. She would not be renewing his work contract. After everyone left, Lennon returned to the cabin and immediately went on patrol, because he couldn't stand staying idle. Since it was already late at night, he set up a tent and tried to close his eyes. But suddenly,
Hello?
a figure seemed to be mischievously teasing Lennon when suddenly his walkie-talkie went off. It was Jackson, saying that someone nearby needed help and asking Lennon to start a search. After walking for a few minutes, Lennon suddenly found himself at the lake, where the walkie-talkie started buzzing again with the voice of a child telling him to run. Lennon fell, hitting his head on a rock. When he regained consciousness, it was already midday. He went to the lake to wash his face, and just as he was about to return to the forest to retrieve his walkie-talkie, suddenly,
Read nothing. Take nothing. Kill nothing.
I haven't.
You have. You've taken from us.
Lennon saw the figure of Sarah, who wasn't real. Suddenly, a child appeared and whispered to him, "Return what you took, or the guardian of the forest will take you instead."
What you took, or they'll keep you.
In the end, it was revealed that an entity, whether a ghost or a witch, inhabited the national park. They would usually sacrifice hikers, and Lennon had made a grave mistake by taking their intended offerings. Sarah and the other hiker. As a result, Lennon would become the next sacrifice. Not only that, but Lennon had yet to realize that he was in another realm. So when he saw his uncle and aunt, He couldn't call out to them because they were in a different dimension.
Hey! Hey! I'm here! I'm here!
Oh, hey.
Realizing that he was in another realm, Lennon decided to return to the cabin, hoping to find a portal that could bring him back to the human world. On his way there, he accidentally passed through a ghost market filled with missing person flyers, hikers, and others who had vanished in this forest. Upon arriving at the cabin, Lennon found his sister Jenny's shoes, triggering memories of the past when he wept over her disappearance.
How could she have gotten that? Oh my God.
As Lennon stepped into the cabin, he suddenly found himself in his childhood home. There, he saw his younger self biting the skin on his own hand. He then followed his sister as she ran to another place, leading him into a room filled with guardians, seated around a coffin containing the carcass of a deer. This moment was a representation of vision, showing that the senior guardians, like Mrs. Jong, Jackson, and the others, were already aware of the forest's tradition of claiming human sacrifices. After experiencing a series of terrifying moments, Lennon suddenly found himself at the lake, with Mrs. Jong beside him. Before speaking, he first asked to make sure she wasn't just an illusion. It turned out that the Mrs. Jong standing with him was real. She then expressed her regret for once allowing Lennon's sister, Jenny, to be sacrificed. To atone for her mistake, Mrs. Jong chose to take Lennon's place as the sacrifice for the forest's entity. After returning to the human world, Lennon was rescued by Jackson, who happened to be there. With everything finally over, Lennon went back to his duties as a national park ranger.
These aren't volunteers. These are members of the NPS, DLM, and USFS. People that are trained.
That's about it.
Before heading to their respective posts, Lennon was informed about a missing hiker, along with James, which, as we all know, was just a formality because even if they were found, they would still be left to remain lost. By chance, Lennon was the one who found James. When James asked, "Are you real?" Lennon replied, "No." He didn't want to repeat the same mistake as before, so he quickly left, allowing James to become a sacrifice to the forest's inhabitants.